As saxophonists, the most important question that we have to answer is, how do I get a better sound? Because nothing else really matters if we don't have this aspect of our playing together. And it's a question we're never really done answering, because we're going to continue refining our sound for the rest of our playing career. In this video, I'm going to go over the things we need to be aware of about mouthpieces and reeds, what we should be doing with our embouchure, and most importantly, what we need to know about breath support to develop a great sound on the saxophone. And make sure you stick around till the end, because I'm going to reveal the secret that all of the greatest players have known to achieve their best possible sound. So when we set out to develop a great sound on the saxophone, what's the very first question that comes to mind? That's right, which mouthpiece should I play? But before we answer that question, the only thing less important than your mouthpiece for getting a good sound is your saxophone. Whether you paid $500 for your saxophone or $15,000, the instrument itself does not have that much of a role in our ability to produce a good sound. What really matters is our ability to control the instrument. Now, mouthpieces do play a role in the type of sound that we get on the saxophone, whether that be bright or dark or somewhere in the middle, but it has much less of an effect on the quality of our sound. Personally, I've spent enough money on mouthpieces and then searching for reeds to match those mouthpieces, that by now I could have a full collection of professional saxophones from soprano to baritone. And in the end, on all of the mouthpieces, I end up just sounding like myself. But of course the mouthpiece does play a role in our saxophone sound, so what do we have to know about it? With any mouthpiece, there are 5 things we have to consider. There is the tip opening, which is the distance between the reed and the tip of the mouthpiece. Generally speaking, larger tip openings are going to be able to tolerate softer reeds. There's the facing length, which is the distance from the tip of the reed to where the reed meets the mouthpiece. And here, generally longer facings are going to be able to tolerate harder reeds. Then we have chambers and baffles. A small chambered mouthpiece with a high baffle is going to give us a brighter sound, whereas a large chambered mouthpiece with less baffle or no baffle is going to give us a darker sound. Now the reed has to be matched to the mouthpiece. Depending on the tip opening, the facing curve, and the interior dimensions of the mouthpiece, different strengths of reeds and different cuts of reeds are going to respond better or worse. And you've probably experienced how it can get pretty expensive to be experimenting with reeds and mouthpieces. In terms of which reed you should use with a mouthpiece, we really only need to answer one question. Does the reed vibrate efficiently? And then for mouthpieces, we just have to answer, can I play a controlled low B flat with this mouthpiece? If the reed vibrates efficiently and you can play a controlled low B flat, then you can build everything else you need from there. And I think it's always worth noting that there's no such thing as a high note mouthpiece on saxophone. Nothing is going to magically give you range, because range on saxophone is a product of understanding how the acoustics of the instruments work. No matter which mouthpiece I'm playing, I have more or less the same range on all of them. Regarding the embouchure, the best advice I can give is form it, then forget it. That's probably counterintuitive and controversial because the embouchure is playing an important role. But here's what I mean. The great trumpet teacher Claude Gordon used to tell his students, forget the lip, which is even more controversial on trumpet because the lip is both your embouchure and the reed. But the only role of the lip is to vibrate. And he told his students this so that they would not be too lip conscious in terms of thinking it was the lips that were making the notes happen on trumpet. Similarly, on saxophone, the only role of the reed is to vibrate. And the only role of the embouchure is to provide an airtight seal of variable pressure to allow the reed to vibrate as efficiently as possible at all times. So with our embouchure, we simply want to allow it to adjust as needed to get the best possible sound in every register. And to do this, it is helpful to understand exactly what the embouchure is doing. Much like the felt on piano wire, our lower lip is simply dampening the higher overtones of the reed to give us the notes we want. We have to make sure that our lower lip is just acting as a cushion on the reed and not applying any unnecessary pressure either directly on the reed or to the sides of it. And there is a simple visualization we can use to help make sure our embouchure is always in the ideal position. So with the mouthpiece in your mouth, imagine that you're forming a horseshoe with your upper lip, like so. What this exaggerated position is going to do is allow you to form a seal around the mouthpiece and then help your lower lip stay more or less straight against your bottom teeth so that it's providing just enough pressure to dampen the higher frequencies of the reed, but not so much that it interferes with the effective vibration of it. Notice that no matter where I'm playing in the range of the saxophone, the embouchure looks more or less the same. But the most important thing for learning how to consistently produce a high quality sound on saxophone is the development of wind power, or breath support, and then ultimately breath control. We often hear from teachers to breathe from the diaphragm, and this can be a really effective visualization for helping people avoid chest breathing. Oftentimes, younger players will lift their shoulders as they inhale, as a means of trying to make more space to put air in your lungs. But an understanding of the anatomy of the lungs tells us this has no effect. Conversely, breathing from the diaphragm helps us to imagine filling the lungs from the bottom up, as the diaphragm contracts downwards and then creates the vacuum that fills the lungs with air. While this can be effective, there is often a different misunderstanding that enters in at this point. So when the diaphragm contracts downwards, it pushes the organs underneath it, and they have nowhere to go but out. So many players have observed when you inhale, your stomach tends to push out a little bit. But then this gives the false impression that to maximally inflate your lungs, what you have to do is push your stomach out and then pull it back in when you go to blow the air. Because the saxophone is easier to blow into than many other wind instruments, particularly those in the brass family, you can often get away with this without realizing that you're not fully engaging the blowing muscles. Some teachers will even have students tie a belt around their abdomen and then focus on pushing against it as they inhale, as a means of developing a habit of deep breathing to promote good breath support. However, I can prove to you right now that this is not the most efficient way to inhale and then blow into a saxophone. And more importantly, this experiment we're about to do will allow you to prove this to yourself. The saxophone is a rather heavy instrument, and most of us play with a neck strap. Add to this the fact that many saxophonists start playing when they're 9 or 10 years old. So a combination of the small frame, the heavy instrument, and the neck strap, which has the tendency to pull us forward a little bit due to the weight of the instrument, we often start out with a habit of less than ideal posture when playing the saxophone. So what I want you to do is put yourself in an exaggerated, hunched over posture. Imagine that you have a bass saxophone on a neck strap and it's kind of pulling you forward. Now place your hand on your stomach and inhale. And you should notice a very pronounced protrusion of your abdomen. Then after you've inhaled, push the air out as if you're blowing into a saxophone. You'll notice when you do this, your abs contract and your stomach seems to pull back in. Now let's try it the better way with the full engagement of all the muscles of forced expiration. So now stand up straight and then pull your arms back with your palms facing forward. So your arms are out to your side, maybe at a 45-degree angle to your body. And what this is doing is pulling your chest up. So when you go to inhale, notice how much more volume gets in. And then when you go to exhale, notice how much more force you're able to blow with in this position, because not only are you engaging the abdominal muscles, but also the internal intercostals, the muscles of the rib cage. So you'll want to always be playing the saxophone in this position, with the chest up, taking the deep breath, and then blowing out using all the blowing muscles. The abdomen, some muscles of the lower back, and the internal intercostals, the muscles around the rib cage. Now, I had said in the last video that the internal intercostals were the primary muscles of forced expiration. After receiving some comments from viewers, I took a look in the scientific literature. That may not actually be the case. In terms of pounds of force per square inch, the abdominals might be exerting more force, but the point still stands that in order to get the maximum amount of compression with the airstream, we want to make sure we're engaging these muscles here. Another thing I learned about the trumpet teacher, Claude Gordon, was that he used to stamp in red on his students' lessons, big breath, chest up. Anytime you're playing, simply think big breath, chest up. And one thing that helps me to maintain this good posture is to play with a harness rather than a neck strap. And further proof that this is how you should be playing the saxophone to develop breath support comes from Lenny Pickett. In an interview he gave years ago about approaching the Altissimo register, he said the first thing to do is strengthen the blowing muscles, or what he called the muscles of the diaphragm, by doing loud, long, sustained tones. Just take any note and play it forte or fortissimo as long as you can, and you'll feel the exact same muscles that we talked about engaging as you're sustaining the tone. And then he says that we develop subtle control of these muscles through doing long tones at various dynamics. In particular, those outlined on page 6 of Top Tones for the Saxophone. So if we know how to select the right mouthpiece and reed, how to form an ideal embouchure, how to play with perfect breath support and breath control, then are we going to have a great sound on saxophone? No. There's something else that supersedes all the topics we've covered so far, which every great saxophonist is aware of, and is the real secret to their highly developed personal sounds. To quote Sigurd Rascher, all musical activity originates in the mind. And I would go as far as to say that the saxophone is not the instrument that we play. It's the interface. This is the instrument. In order to play the saxophone with a great sound, we have to define what is a great sound on the saxophone. Depending on who you listen to, that's going to influence what you think of as a good sound. Maybe it's Michael Brecker, or Cannonball Adderley, or Joshua Redman. So the first thing we have to do is listen to the saxophone players that we like to establish an ideal to work towards. We have to have that clear mental picture of what do I want my own voice on saxophone to sound like. With everything we've talked about in mind, now you're ready for the real secret. To develop a saxophone sound that you're truly satisfied with, you need to be perpetually dissatisfied with your sound. In other words, you have to be continually striving for improvement. And the way we do this is by actively listening to ourselves. No matter how long you've been playing the saxophone, you should start recording yourself immediately. Many players avoid this for a long time because it can be both a humbling and uncomfortable experience. Because it can be shocking that the sound that you're actually making that others hear is so far from the one that you're perceiving when you're playing the instrument. But even when we're just practicing or performing, we always have to be actively listening to ourselves with a critical ear. Critical, but not judgmental. Judgmental is, I'm so bad at the saxophone, I sound awful, I'm never going to get any better. Critical is, okay, I'm out of tune here, it's not so resonant here, I need more vibrato in this note, I need less vibrato in this one, and so on. When we're able to honestly critique our playing without judging it, you identify little things you can get better at and strive to improve them every day. This compounds over time, and you end up developing a great saxophone sound that not only are you and others eager to listen to, but one that only continues to improve as you keep playing. If you found this information valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so that I'm able to reach more viewers. and ultimately continue to create higher and higher quality saxophone content. If you want to take things further, check out the free masterclass in the bio, and watch this video next on how to dramatically improve breath support on the saxophone.